What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey Larry. So in this episode, I'm going to give an update on the MLB. I'll start off with the Red Sox, and then I'll talk about some news across the league at the end. It'll be a quick episode, just a quick rundown of things going on in baseball over the last week or two. We'll start off with the Red Sox. Devastating news out of spring training yesterday for the Sox. Lucas Giolito partially tore his UCL in his throwing arm and may miss the entire 2024 season. That's a brutal hit to an already thin and questionable rotation. Giolito was signed to be a workhorse for that rotation, as he has been a workhorse for most of his career, really hasn't suffered any injuries over the last 4 or 5 years. But now with this injury, likely he misses the entire 2024 season. And even though he signed just a 2-year, $38.5 million deal, he's likely going to pick up his option for next year. And that means the Red Sox are going to have to give him even more money next year with him coming off an injury, a UCL injury. And that's even with 2 average years in a row. So his last 2 seasons, 2022, 2023, below average seasons. 2024, he's going to miss the entire year. In 2025, the Red Sox are still going to be paying him, I believe it's $18 million next season. So this is a major hit for the Red Sox right now, but also for the Red Sox next season as well. Giolito had Tommy John surgery in 2012 after being drafted by Washington. He was supposed to be an innings eater for the Red Sox this season, but now they need to fix their entire plan in their entire rotation. I'll get to that in just a minute. One last thing I want to mention about Giolito was this. He was great before sticky stuff started to be banned. Before sticky stuff started to be banned, he was one of the best pitchers in the AL. But over the last 2 seasons, since sticky stuff started to be looked at, he has a 4.89 ERA over the last 2 years. 4.89 ERA over the last 2 years. In his last 5 full MLB seasons, though, he's been on the mound a lot. 173.1 innings, 176 innings, 178 innings, 161 innings, and 184 innings. Over the last 5 full MLB seasons, he has been an absolute workhorse and a guy that eats innings. But now the Red Sox have to change their entire rotation. And this is what their rotation's looking like right now. And it's obviously devastating for this to happen before the season begins, because they were planning on Giolito being maybe the guy as the number 2 to Brian Bayo in the rotation. And now that plan is completely gone. And it's a brutal injury for a guy like Giolito, a guy that was looking to have a bounce-back year with the Red Sox and was looking to find a way to return to form that he had with the Chicago White Sox from 2018, let's say, to 2020. He was looking to return to that. But now that's obviously not going to be the case this season, unfortunately. So this is what the Red Sox rotation looks like right now. Brian Bayo's the number 1. He's the ace. 12-11 record last season, a 4.24 ERA in 28 starts. He's only 24 years old, a lot of room to grow, but he did show a lot of potential last season. Nick Pavetta's probably the number 2 right now. In his last 5 starts of the season last year, he had a 187 batting average against, a 2.37 ERA, 38 strikeouts to 5 walks, and 30 in a third innings pitched. That was pretty good. And that was in his last 5 starts of the season. He was also great out of the bullpen. After being pushed back to the bullpen in May last year, in his last 30 appearances, he made 8 starts, 22 bullpen appearances, and then 8 starts. He had a 3.16 ERA with a 182 batting average against him in those 30 games. That's good enough to be a number 2 in a rotation if he could stick to those numbers. And I do like Pivetta a lot. I'm rooting for him to do well. The number 3 in the rotation right now is probably Cutter Crawford, a guy that I have a ton of confidence in. I think he can be a 3 ERA guy, and I think he ends up being the number 2 guy in the rotation by the end of the season. I have a lot of confidence in Cutter Crawford. I think he can be one of the better pitchers in the game of baseball this season. I think he can be one of the best starters in the American League this year. I know that's obviously high aspirations for him, but he's shown he does have the stuff to be a great pitcher in the game of baseball. Obviously, there's inconsistency there. Obviously, he's had some bad games, but he's also shown a lot of potential as well. And I think he ends up being the number 2 guy in the rotation for the Red Sox, and I think he has an ERA right around 3 this season. At number 4 in the rotation, you have Garrett Whitlock, who had a 5.23 ERA in 10 starts last season before going back to the bullpen. He's likely a better bullpen guy in my eyes than a starter, so I'd probably put him in the bullpen. If you look at his numbers as a starter, he's 5-4 in 19 starts in his career with a 4.76 ERA. But as a reliever, 80 appearances in his career, 2.65 ERA. He's a lot more effective as a reliever, and the Red Sox have needed help in the bullpen. I know Chris Martin was great last season. I know Kelly Jansen's the closer. They could move on from Kelly Jansen at some point. I think Garrett Whitlock is a better asset as a bullpen pitcher than a starter. But that's just me. Maybe he starts the year as a starter, and then we'll see how things go and put him back in the bullpen if he struggles. At number 5, we have Tanner Houck. I think Tanner Houck has Cy Young stuff. I know I've said it forever. I don't mean he's going to win the Cy Young. What I mean by it, his pitches have a lot of break. And if you look at a lot of the depth on a lot of his breaking balls, they're just as good as anybody in the game of baseball. It's a question of putting it together for 4 or 5 starts in a row to build confidence, and then I think he'd really take off. We saw him be really good in his debut in 2020. It was only 3 starts, but looked very good over that 3-game stretch, was pitching confidently. But over the last couple of years, it's been a lot of inconsistency with Tanner Houck. Last year, 6-10 record, a 5.01 ERA, but he has better stuff than that shows. And then the last pitching option to be a starter right now, it's rumored that Josh Winkowski could be a starter for the Red Sox. But I do think he's a better bullpen guy than a starter. In 2 years, he started 1 year for the Red Sox, and then last year was a reliever. As a starter, he made 15 starts, a 5.66 ERA, and a 5-7 record. But as a reliever, a 4-4 record in 60 appearances with a 3.13 ERA. I think he's a better reliever than he is a starter. So Whitlock and Winkowski, I'd both put in the bullpen. And that leaves Tanner Houck as your number 4. And the Red Sox are looking for number 5, that means. And I'd add Rich Hill. I'd make Rich Hill the number 5 starter. I know he was on air today on WEEI with Rob Bradford calling the games today for the Red Sox in spring training. I think Rich Hill would be a great number 5 for that Red Sox in the rotation. And this would be my rotation if I were Alex Cora, who I think ends up walking away from the Red Sox after the season's over. I know that's neither here nor there, but I do think Alex Cora ends up leaving the Red Sox after the season ends. This would be my rotation, though, if I were Alex Cora. Brian Bayo, Cutter Crawford, Nick Pivetta, Tanner Houck, Rich Hill. Not enough to win the World Series, probably, but still competitive enough, in my opinion. And not a lot of money is being spent on the rotation right there, so that's what John Henry wants. I do think the Red Sox are going to score some runs this season. I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's all about run prevention, which the Red Sox are talking a lot right now during spring training about run prevention. It's about pitching better, and I think they are capable of that. I do. I think the Red Sox are going to score runs. It comes down to pitching. I do think there's talent there. Cutter Crawford's a guy that's very under the radar. Nobody really talks about him, but he had a very good season last year for the Red Sox. A 4.04 ERA, a 6-8 record with 135 strikeouts and 129 innings pitched with a 1.106 whip. That's a pretty good whip. He had a good season last year, and I think he's going to be even better this season. So now I'm going to move on and talk about some news across the MLB. Cody Bellinger just signed a 3-year, $80 million deal to return to the Cubs last week. Was really interested to see where he was going to end up, but he goes right back to the place where he had a huge bounce-back year last season. 26 home runs with the Cubs last year, a 307 batting average, 881 OPS, 97 runs batted in, and 20 stolen bases. Great to see him playing more confidently and getting his confidence back. He looked great last season in Chicago, and they're a team to watch out for in the NL in my eyes. They have some good starting pitching, some young talent to build around, including Michael Busch, who they just got in a trade with the Dodgers in the offseason. I think Michael Busch is an absolute beast and a guy to watch out for. I do think he has all-star potential in the next couple of years. So there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Cubs fan. They have a lot of things going their way right now, and last year was a big bounce-back year. They made some noise, and they're looking good going into this season as well. I know they lost a couple pieces, like Marcus Stroman, but at the end of the day, they do still have enough pitching there to try to make a run in the NL. So it's obviously good to see him sign and go back to the Cubs. Another guy that signed recently, Matt Chapman, just signed with the San Francisco Giants over the last week. A 3-year, $54 million deal. I wanted to record an episode a couple weeks ago and give my predictions on where I think guys are going to end up, like Matt Chapman, Cody Bellinger, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery. Didn't get to record that, unfortunately, but I did think Chapman was going to go to the Giants at that point. Since I thought they could use another bat, even though they added Jorge Soler, I'm a big fan of Soler, but I thought they could use another bat, and I expected San Francisco to be more aggressive in free agency. So last week, or 2 weeks ago when I wanted to record this episode, I predicted San Francisco would end up being the place for Matt Chapman. And he ends up signing a 3-year, $54 million deal. So that's a good pickup for San Francisco. And hopefully he has a better year this year than he did last year with Toronto. So now there's 2 major pieces left in the free agency market. Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery. Where are these guys going to end up? Well, wherever Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery end up, I think that's going to be a major difference maker in my podcast win-loss predictions for every team, which I started to do that about a week ago now. Right now I have the Red Sox surprising some people with about 83 wins. I know it's a hot take, but at the end of the day, the Red Sox did win 51 games last season against teams with a 500 record or better. That was the 3rd most wins in baseball last season against teams with a 500 record or better. And yes, the Red Sox do play in a division where every team's over 500, so they play more games against 500 teams than everyone else. But that still is impressive. They were 51-55 last season versus teams 500 or better. But they did lose some pieces as well. Justin Turner, Chris Sale, Alex Verdugo. But if they could add a top of the rotation piece, I would be absolutely psyched. And I never thought Lucas Giolito was the top of the rotation piece anyways. But if they could add a Blake Snell or add Jordan Montgomery, that would raise them 3 or 4 wins in my opinion. Right now, the Red Sox need is still the same. They still need a top end of the rotation guy. Especially with the Yankees getting Juan Soto and the Orioles being on the rise and the AL East all making moves around the Red Sox. Justin Turner going to Toronto. There's a lot of things that happened in the AL East this offseason, and the Red Sox didn't really do too much. Yes, they did trade Alex Verdugo. They did also trade Chris Sale. They did let Justin Turner leave. But at the end of the day, their need last season is the same as right now. They still need an ace. The Red Sox still need an ace right now. But I wouldn't get anyone's hopes up. I don't think the Red Sox are going to sign Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, even though I think it would be good for the Red Sox to go get a guy for the top of the rotation. I don't think John Henry's going to invest in this team right now, especially if he was going to invest with Lucas Giolito probably being the number 2 option. He isn't going to invest in them now. I think Blake Snell ends up with the Angels. I think he signs a 5-year, $125 million deal with Anaheim. They do need more pitching, and I think he'd fit well in that rotation. Coming off a Cy Young season, he was great last season. I think the Angels go out and get him. And then I think Montgomery ends up back in Texas on a 4-year, $90 million deal. Scherzer's right now out until at least June. They do need a top-of-the-rotation guy next to Nathan Eovaldi. Whether Eovaldi's their number 1 or number 2, he is injury-prone as well. They do need another guy at the top of the rotation. Montgomery's a major piece for them when they got him at the trade deadline last year. It was a big reason they won the World Series. I think he ends up back in Texas on a 4-year, $90 million deal. Anyways, that'll wrap up this episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.